Hello, and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey. I'm here with two of my favorite people on planet Earth to talk about women's cycling. Gracie Elvin.
Hey, good to be here.
Loren Rowney.
Good morning, everyone. That was a lovely introduction, Abby.
Yeah,
just
makes me feel good every time.
Yeah. Abby Mickey's my friend.
Like best friends. We should have bracelets. I'll send you guys bracelets. I've been making like not hundreds, but the goal is to have a good amount of friendship bracelets for when I eventually go see the Arrows tour next year in Dublin. Because, you go to a Taylor Swift concert and you exchange bracelets with everybody, friendship bracelets, because Taylor Swift wrote one song with one line, exchange the friendship bracelets or trade the friendship bracelets or something. Just the one line. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, we're going to make hundreds and hundreds of friendship bracelets and completely renew the bead industry.
Yeah, wow. That's cute. That's a good little thing to be able to do.
Yeah, and I've made Lila like a stack of friendship bracelets, and she takes them to daycare, and then I'll go pick her up from daycare, and they'll be like the other kids at daycare will be wearing the bracelets.
That's
it's
adorable.
Really cute. There's one little boy in her daycare that when I pick her up, he runs to the gate and like holds on to the gate and just cries.
Aww.
It's very cute. I suspect he belongs to a cyclist because his name on the plaque is Nil, and that's not really a Catalan name, but I am too embarrassed to ask, whose child is this?
That's a Scandinavian name, no? Or Nil actually could be German. Yeah.
Possibly, but there's a bunch of cyclists who have their kids in the daycare where Lila goes. So I'm like, I feel like this is a cyclist. Sometimes I sit there and I look at the locker names and I'm like, like today I dropped her off. This is totally off topic. Today I dropped her off and she was waddling down. Like I was walking her to the door and she had on purple unicorn pants and a rainbow puffy because style. And she was holding her favorite bunny that's got flowers all over it. And she's like walking to the daycare and this woman is walking towards us. And I was like, oh, lo siento, like getting out of the way. And she goes, too cute in Australian, like a heavy Australian accent. And I was like, who are you? Can we be friends?
Australian. I feel like you would know who the person is, but then there are so many new people up there, I guess.
Yeah.
It's got to be easy to narrow down right now because most of them are in Australia.
Although I feel a lot don't go back now.
Yeah, a lot don't.
I mean, once you have a family in Europe as well, I think to make that trip every year, they just don't do it as often. Yeah. Particularly if you have a foreign partner, because quite a few of the guys now have Catalan wives or partners.
Jack Haig hasn't been back since like 2015 or something crazy. He's just like straight Catalan now.
Yeah. I mean, I always went back for my family. That was a big thing. And also I liked the Aussie summer. But actually I suffered more and more as the years went on because I don't know why. I just did not like the Queensland weather anymore. I couldn't deal with the 4:30 wake up and the humidity that comes with being there in December, January. It's awful.
Well, get ready for it because we're going to go visit Gracie someday.
Yeah, please.
Hey, my plan is this time next year I'm in Australia if all goes to plan for Christmas. So
love it.
Yeah, then definitely.
We all need to convene at some point. Like we need to make it happen. It has to happen.
100%.
If we're still making this podcast in like 2 years, we could all go to TDU.
Get Tom's to, it's a post-Olympic year, go to TDU, take the family.
Exactly.
Get aligns with your work. Perfect.
Be awesome. Can we all go to New Zealand though? Maybe we all like go somewhere else and we all go to New Zealand because I just really want to go to Hobbiton.
Yeah, New Zealand's pretty rad. I love it there. I would easily be talked into going there.
I would easily live there, I think.
Yeah, me too. It's so nice. Any Kiwis listening, good on you. You've made it great.
Like, no, we don't want you. We want to keep it like it is.
Yeah, no, there's already too many Aussies here. We definitely don't want any Canadians or Americans. No.
Shut the borders. Okay, Well, now that we've gotten the pleasantries out of the way, we've actually got a good amount of news that I wasn't expecting. We're going to get to a couple of the really good listener questions that we got that I asked everyone on the Discord for. Massive thank you to everyone on the Discord for sending in questions. We absolutely love getting everyone involved. So we'll do, I think, more questions next year. Like I liked when I was trying to incorporate one into each episode, and maybe we'll try to do that again, because it's just awesome when we can get you guys involved in the podcast that are listening. But first, it's wild that we're talking about this in December, but the Giro route was announced.
Yep.
Completely insane. Like, yeah, it gives me a little bit of hope that RCS taking over the Giro for the first time ever maybe is a good thing for women's cycling. I mean, they've been pretty clear in the media that they want to do the race justice. They want to build it up to be a women's Grand Tour. Their first year with it, they already chopped one day off, so it's only 8 stages. It's the shortest it's been since, I think, 2013 maybe, but heck, we'll see. If the live coverage is good, that's what we need, is just the live coverage. We're not going to know about that for many months, but it's crazy that we have the route, because usually it's like June. We're like, well, we better get the route soon because the race is in 2 weeks. Yeah, I remember writing the preview this year, like, I don't know anything about this race.
Do you think the teams get some leaked information beforehand? Because, it's still a big race regardless of the disorganization. And when you're showing up to such a tour that, you have ambitions of, say, winning it or performing, often you want to do your homework beforehand. So I think that's, this is a very good sign. It's positive. It's December. In terms of planning for 2024, it's so important for riders to, they already know what their schedule is for next year, particularly with the Olympics and World Championships and the Tour de France all coming within a few months of each other. For the riders, it's a big deal. And I think we're going to see a pretty stacked field, I would say, at the Giro. I don't know what your opinions are of it, but generally speaking, leading up to the Olympics, the Giro, or I think the one year, Gracie, you did Turingen as a good lead-up race. And then it was, a good showing as well as who's coming into really good form before the Olympics. We'll go into the stage by stage a little bit, I guess, but the time trial is in fact a time trial, not a prologue. So I think for any time trialers to have one final crack, even though it's only 14 kilometers, it's still good preparation before the games.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point, Loren. Like the time trial, you don't get that many opportunities to time trial in the season, especially until that point in the season, because it's all been pretty much classics and a few smaller tours. So I think it's going to be a different Giro to what we've seen in the last few years. Obviously, the Giro used to be the prestige tour of the year until the Tour de France Femme came along. I did plenty of Giro recon, so I'm not sure if they did any recon the last year or two because of the lack of information, but I'm sure that there'll be a bit more recon done now that there's info, but also how, that slightly more importance on this tour going into the Olympics. So, and I'd say in the past, choosing between Turingen and the Giro was a better choice. I'm not sure if that's the same now, because Turingen still hasn't been promoted to World Tour, but it was safer and sometimes kind of better conditioning, I guess, for big races that were coming in the future. So I'm sure some people will still opt for Turingen, but I'm not sure where that even lies in the calendar for next year. Should probably look that up, but it might not even work anyway. But I preferred Turingen because, like I said, it was safer, and you don't really want to be having a big crash before the games or whatever's coming up that you've got your heart set on. The Giro, even if it's going to be run better, quote unquote, in the future, it's still Italian roads, you know, like the roads don't really change. The route planning will get a bit different and a bit better, but like overall, racing in Italy is inherently just a little bit dangerous, similar to racing in Belgium, but just in a different way.
Yeah.
So there is the risk there, and there's some riders that know they'll be going to the Olympics and they'll still opt not to go to the Giro and just go to altitude instead.
For example, Kashani Udoma has said that she's not planning to go to the Olympics because it's a course that doesn't really suit her. I wonder if she'll change her mind, given that I think it's coming out now that people are going and pre-riding the course, that it's a lot more challenging than people thought. Chatting with a couple of the riders who have seen it, they've said that, okay, actually, this is not a sprinter's race. This is a selective course, kind of like Worlds this year. The final circuits are really challenging. But I wonder if there will be riders that hit the Giro Tour and don't go to the Olympics, obviously with a 90-rider start list and only 4 riders per nation as the maximum. There's many, many riders that are better suited to the Giro and the Tour that will not go to the Olympics. So that I think we're going to be looking at the most competitive Giro that we've seen in years. Like even pre 2020, even pre Van der Breggen retiring and it becoming the Annemiek show, it was always the two of them. It was down to the two of them. And it's been the two of them that have won the last 8 out of 10 editions, I believe. Like just complete Dutch and American dominance for the last 10 years. And I think that we're looking at a race that is going to be a lot more targeted by riders. For example, like Elise Longa Borghini is probably looking at this course feeling pretty good about her chances at an Italian taking the race, whether it be her or Gaia. But it's not as insane when it comes to climbing as Giro's past, like similar a little bit to last year or this year, I guess, 2023. What month is it? I don't even know. That it wasn't a really, really climby course. Annemiek was just doing Annemiek things. So I'm curious how that's going to play into the race, but I do think it's a lot more open. Like without Annemiek, it's a lot more open. And I would be shocked if Demi goes to the Giro, I think. Because I think that Demi is going to be looking at that Olympics like, I only get a certain number of chances at this. And she can go solo if she has a strong team, if the Dutch actually rally behind her, like if she actually has a team that is going to support her, versus Tokyo, where it was just complete, like the team of 4 was divided into 3 teams of 2 and 1, 2 and 1 and 1. So yeah, I don't know. I think I have high hopes for the Giro next year, which I think I've said many, many times in the past and always been let down. But it's a good sign that we have the course. And like Loren said, the first stage is an actual time trial. It's 14.6 kilometers, I believe. So it's not a weird length. It's like 0.2 longer than a actual prologue. So you can't call it a prologue, but it's basically a prologue. And then there's a couple, it kind of does what the Tour did in 2022, where it built on itself. So we've got like a sprint stage on stage 2. Stage 3, there's a short climb at the end. Stage 4 is like 2 lumps at the end. Stage 5 is like a little bit lumpier. Stage 6 is the longest stage of the race and ends on a kicker. And then stage 7 has 2 pretty big climbs, not massive. Stage 8 starts climbing from the gun, and then you descend to the finish after like a plateau with some rolling. So it's like a race that slowly builds on itself, which is great for the jersey changing hands every day.
And what date actually is the Olympics? Because this is running from the 7th to the 14th?
July 27th is the Olympic road race.
So actually it's quite perfect if you're looking for a really hard lead-up race beforehand. And I mean, the beauty of the Olympics being on the continent is that there's no hectic travel either. So you could go and do a hard race like the Giro and then be able to come down a little bit, recover, and come up again for the race in Paris. So, no, it's really exciting. Like you said, Abby, I guess the question mark will be what sort of coverage we're going to get next year. and who's going to have the rights to that, and how we're going to watch it now that there's no more GCN. I mean, I'll be fine, I think, in Belgium. We seem to get everything over here, which
You've
is
got
great.
Eurosport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gracie's the one who's going to be kind of left out to dry, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty crap. I don't know if I want to buy a whole new subscription with an add-on, but it's also my job to be on top of cycling, so maybe I'll just write it off. Yeah.
Do you know yet, Gracie, what races you'll be covering in 2024? You can't say.
No, I don't know for sure the Euro stuff, but I'll definitely be at Aussie Nationals, TDU, and Cadell's. So I get to, see Nationals, which is always a good one, and then the first couple of World Tour races. So that'll be cool. And then I'll get to do some of the classics, just not quite sure which ones yet, but hopefully some of my faves.
Mm-hmm. And it's the final Yun Buninyong, which can be interesting and special actually to be there for the finale.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, it's going to be weird for it to not be there. I think it's really good that they're changing, but I also just want to say a big thank you to anyone listening from the Ballarat and Buninyong community, because it's like they always put on such a good show. Cyclists were welcomed. It was, while people complained about the course, never changing and it suiting a specific kind of rider, like the actual community part of it was exceptional. So I think that's going to be really tough shoes to fill for the next location. So yeah, I think it'll be cool to be there and say goodbye and relive some good memories and see someone make some good memories one more time. So yeah, it'd be cool.
I heard rumors that it might go to Perth next.
Yeah,
wow.
maybe. I think like there's some places putting their hand up, but it does have to, there's a lot of boxes to check. I'm sure that they check a lot of boxes, and anyone that is putting their hand up, is already a long way ahead, because there's a lot of clubs and locations that don't want it because it's too hard. I'm assuming Cycling Australia or Oz Cycling now, they'll make the call on it, and they have to take things into consideration, such as cost of travel, to make it fair for people to be able to afford to be there. So I think that's a challenge for that part of Australia.
Yeah.
Perth is quite far away from everything.
But they've got a great cycling community there, so I think that they would love to have it.
Isn't Jai Hindley from there?
Yeah.
Oh, there's some top talents that
lots of pros are from that side.
Yeah. As juniors, actually, the WA team was always one of the strongest when competing. But I guess the East Coast as well. I'm thinking more towards 2032. I'm curious, in the years leading up to Australia's next Olympic Games, maybe they'll test out the course around Brisbane, which will be challenging, like you said, Gracie, because road closures in Australia are a whole different ballgame to, say, what we experience here in Belgium. They close roads here for really small races, where in Australia it's not as easy. At least that's my understanding from people working in event management.
Yeah,
and that's really a challenge of the NRS, I believe.
Queensland is actually doing quite a good job for a state that is so big, so spread out, and maybe not so cyclist friendly. But in the southeastern part of Queensland, Brizzy, Sunshine Coast, and a few other areas, they actually do cycling events quite well, and they're actually becoming quite good the last few years at hosting. The ACA NRS team has been a big part of that. Some of the people involved in that team have also been involved in events and stuff. So I think that's been a huge push up there, and big thanks to those people involved. And you're completely right, Loren, they're going to want to start testing out areas that could be suitable for the Olympics up there. So plus there'll be a better appetite in the local community for more sporting events because of that in Australia, we're calling it the green and gold decade. We've got quite a few major events in the next 9 years now, leading into the games. So it's not just Olympic Games. I think there's like a rugby thing and probably more football and I don't know what else, but there's a bunch of stuff. So I think people are just going to be getting into the spirit of international level sport, and I think nationals up there is quite likely to happen. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it lands in Queensland.
Because we have tons of time to talk about the nationals. We'll have a podcast, obviously, around the nationals, maybe multiple. That will happen in January. We're getting so close to being back to racing. The UCI announced the 15 teams that will be World Tour in 2024, and that includes Saratisit WNT has made the jump up to World Tour. About time, I say. For a long time, they've been in the ranking of the World Tour without being a World Tour team. So excited to see them up there. And then, to no surprise at all, AG Insurance Sudal is also in the World Tour for 2024. They applied last year and didn't get a spot. Phoenix de Koonik got the final spot last year. So, yep, the 15 teams are AG Insurance, Sudal, Canyon SRAM, Saratisit WNT, FDJ, Suez, Phoenix de Koonik, Human Powered Health, Little Trek, Liv Alula Jayco, which is Liv Cycling and Jayco Alula mushed together. The Movistar team, Team DSM Firmenich, SD Works, Visma Lisa Bike, which is Jumbo Visma, UAE Team ADQ, and UnoX Mobility. UnoX was the team that was, I believe, lowest in the ranking. They got pretty lucky with the folding of EF Education, TIBCO, Silicon Valley Bank, and the merging of Liv Racing and Jayco Alula. And then the final team is Roland, which is formerly Israel Premier Tech Roland something. They had about the longest name in cycling. But Israel Premier Tech announced that they are dropping sponsorship of that team after 2 years. So that will only be Roland next year. They went from the longest name to the shortest name, which is a really interesting development because if everyone remembers, Israel Premier Tech announced they were sponsoring the team at a weird time in 2022. Like already the season had started, the kits were out. They'd already announced their kit. They didn't change the kit. They didn't want their logos to be on the kit. So they were like a silent sponsor of the team in 2022. And then in 2023, they went full tilt. They were saying in the media all the time how committed they were to having a women's World Tour team. And then after 1 year of being a full team, they've dropped the women's team entirely. They said in a statement that they plan to return to women's cycling in the future, but there was no clear news about that. They didn't actually answer any questions about that, just kind of made a generic, yeah, we'll be back. So that's a really weird development that I'm not entirely sure the point of, but here we are.
Yeah, very weird, but also not surprising.
Yeah, it's never surprising, is it? Classic cycling stuff. And in other weird news, the UCI also put out in their news about the 2 new World Tour teams. They also slid in there that there's an Uzbekistan team that will be in the running for all the World Tour races next year. It's a team called Tashkent City Women, and none of us have ever heard of it. And they're ranked 18th in the standing, so they're actually not that low compared to the Spanish women's team that applied for World Tour status this year that didn't get it. But it's interesting that they've been potentially handed a spot in the Tour de France Femme, given that we've got teams like Parketo Valkenburg, Life Plus Wahoo, and Co-op High Tech Products that have been around for years and develop women and put them in the Women World Tour. I'm dying.
I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I guess this could only really be a money thing. I don't see how else. Like you said, I mean, in terms of points, if they're ranked 18th, we did have a bit of a look on, the Cycling Stats website to see where they got in their points, and they've been heavily present in, all the races, basically. the Asian tours. I'm trying to see here actually where they've been, but racking up points basically at races where there's UCI points on offer, but maybe the level isn't as high. It's just a really interesting contribution.
Yeah, and there has been some questioning over whether their points tallying is legit. So there's been a couple of other teams that have brought this up to the UCI saying, hey, how come they've accumulated this many points in this amount of time? There's criteria for UCI sanctioned races and points, such as it might be a UCI sanctioned rank, for example, but if there's a minimum amount of riders from a minimum amount of countries, or I'm not quite sure of exactly the details, if the race entrants don't meet that criteria, then there can be, that point system taken away, because if, there's only one rider there, then they get the maximum points. That's not really a fair way to gain points for a team or an individual. So there's been a couple of teams that have missed out on this wild card spot that arguably do deserve it more, and they could probably take riders to most Women's World Tour races, if not all. Whereas this team has already stated that they won't be able to go to all World Tour races. They'll probably only go to a handful. So it's a bit of a head scratcher to be like, okay, well, who's doing who a favor, and why? What's the future outcome of this? We're not cynical at all here on this podcast, but it's kind of like, who's friends with who at the UCI, who wants a job in the future, who wants worlds, who wants something to do with men's racing. I don't know. There's plenty of question marks in my mind. It's good to have a team that's supported to come through a country that doesn't necessarily have a strong footing in cycling, especially in women's cycling. So in that regard, it's a positive, but it's just a step too soon for this team, and support could have been better made in other ways.
And I think when we think of the professionalization of women's cycling and what's happening currently, when you give teams like this wild card entries, and I know that Gracie and I have been in races where there are teams that show up that we have no idea who they are. Actually, the Giro is a classic with this. You would get some small Italian teams, and quite often, this might sound bad, it made the race unsafe because you had riders racing there that weren't used to the normal ways of the European peloton, lack of experience, maybe only used to racing in small pelotons of 40 or less. So there's a safety element to it too, as well as like bringing down the level. And I think you don't want to see that in a race like the Tour de France, where you have riders getting dropped in the neutral.
That race is dangerous enough already. We've seen horrendous crashes at the Tour, partially because of that issue, which it all kind of trails back to development.
But you wouldn't see this in the men's peloton.
You'd never see this in the men's peloton. They would of course go to smaller level races and build their way up, but you would never see something like this on the men's side. They really take only the top pro teams into the big World Tour races. So it's kind of a weird development, especially as we're trying to further professionalize the women's side. And on the points thing, so they pulled 709 points from the national championships alone, which is 41% of their total for 2023. So kind of a weird thing there that it's a fully Uzbekistan team, like all the riders, so they don't have a single other nationality on the team. There is one name on the team that anyone who's followed cycling for the last handful of years will know, and that's Olga Zabelinskaya, former Russian rider, has Olympic medals.
I think if you only just watch the Olympics, she's a rider who pops up, I swear, every year of the Olympics.
Yeah. She's changed her nationality to Uzbekistan, and she's on the team, which is a thing in of itself. But yeah, a really interesting decision from the UCI. And I like that there are smaller teams fighting back against this, because there are teams that deserve a spot in the Tour de France Femme, and I think it needs to be a more international team if it's going to be on that kind of that kind of stage. Like, we don't want to we don't want to make the peloton smaller. Like, we want more nationalities, we want more representation, so yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting little bit of news that we thought that we would talk about. Moving on, actually, I hadn't put this in the run sheet, and I have to look it up. Cyclists. I wonder if they have an actual list on their website of all the women who got selected for the grant.
Oh, the Strava grant. That one?
Yeah. Speaking of diversity, or an attempt at further diversifying the peloton that is very European, the Cyclist Alliance, we talked previously, I had an episode a couple months ago about the T-Camp Pre-Career Strava grant to help riders with promise gain entry into the peloton. Basically, they've been slowly releasing the riders that they chose for the grant. They have a rider from Uganda. Her name is Florence Nakagwe. I'm sorry about name pronunciation. Sophie Marr from Australia, Emma Matthews from the UK, Jasilia Momokwazi from Uganda, Florence Normand from Canada, Renee Van Hout from the Netherlands, Emily Watts of Australia, Maddie LaRue from South Africa, and Caroline Amazonias from Brazil, who's a mountain biker. So that's the 9 riders that they have announced so far who've received grant money to fund their goals of making it in this sport. Pretty cool to see.
Super cool. Thanks, Strava. And I got to be on some meetings with some of those big brands that have been supporting Cyclist Alliance for a long time now. And I haven't been with them this year, but in the past, it was just so energizing to be on a call with people from Strava, people from Zwift, people from those big bike brands like Specialized and Live and Cannondale. And they were just like, they really believed in the Cyclist Alliance kind of ideologies, and they put their money where their mouth is. And this is another awesome example of them going, yep, if you figure out a way that we can directly impact women's cycling, we're in. And this is awesome. So I really hope that it helps this handful of up-and-coming cyclists, because being part of the mentor program too for a couple of years there was really cool, but we just didn't quite have the resources or the experience all the time to do that pre-career stuff, or that's, really helping people get their foot in the door in Europe in the first place. We were working with like newbie World Tour or pro level riders. So it's awesome. I'm so proud of everyone that's still working with the Cyclist Alliance. Ruth Hugenboom needs a special mention because she was working with me for a long time, and she stayed on again this year. So yeah, she's awesome. So is everyone else there. And it's just one more thing that they've been able to achieve for women's cycling.
I look forward to the day that they have like a composite team they take to lower level races.
Yeah.
That'll be really cool.
And Iris will make an awesome kit.
Yes.
Oh my God. But she also, like, I wish that she DS'd. She does so many things.
Yeah,
She's too busy.
She did DS when she first retired for a little bit. But I think she was with a men's.
Okay.
She was with a men's team.
I don't think she's done women's cycling, but she would be an awesome DS for sure.
Final bit of news, and then we'll answer some questions. The SD Works team kit was revealed for 2024 in a video that I could feel Lorena Wiebes shivering with cold through the screen. But I like the kit. It's cool. It's got a lot of like color blockage. Like, it could be compared a little bit to the little Trek kit, but in like a purple pink color scheme. And I I think it'll be easier to pick out of the peloton. Granted, we don't know what the rest of the peloton looks like yet, so we'll reserve our judgment until that day. But yeah, the new kit is out.
What year was it that there were like 7 kits with the same color scheme?
I think that was 2021, maybe.
Yeah, that wasn't very long ago. It was hard for commentators.
I called it Pinkgate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I called it Pinkgate in the newsletter because it was like, I think it was like the first year that EF came on. So was it 2022? Anyway, it was like EF, Canyon SRAM, SC Works, UAE had like a weird pinkish rainbow kit that year. Yeah. Oh man, it sucked. It was like 2 months. You were just like, I don't know who anyone is. So looking forward to seeing more kits out soon. There's definitely going to be some new ones this year with the teams like Liv, Alula, Jaco, which is basically a new team. I wonder what they're going to do. And obviously we have a new EF kit to look forward to. So really excited about that. All right, let's answer some listener questions. I'm going to save my favorite one for last. I'm very excited about it.
Let's hope we get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. We're not going to get to all of these. We'll save a couple for an episode early next year because we got so many good ones. So I'm excited to dive into these. Let's go with the first question I've got here. Interested to know how the Australian collegiate racing scene compares to American collegiate system, since it seems like a lot of younger Aussie talent is coming through that program. Do you guys know anything about the Australian collegiate system?
Unless I'm missing something, we don't have a collegiate system for cycling, maybe for other sports, but our university, we would call it in Australia. We're not huge on tertiary sport, that level, I guess. Not like America.
Do they have like club teams?
Well, there's the uni games, which is every year. I competed in it a million moons ago, which is basically a week of drinking, but people do compete. It's a lot of fun, but it's definitely not of the level that I'm aware of in the US, because I know some top cyclists have actually come through the collegiate. Exactly. Case in point, Ali Stalker as well, I think came through collegiate. I think for mountain biking, it's quite good, collegiate.
Kate Courtney was in the collegiate system, yeah. Yeah, collegiate in the US is huge. I mean, especially for women. A ton of women come in through collegiate racing. Katie Hall was discovered in collegiate racing. Corinne or Lebecki did collegiate. Like, a ton of riders do the collegiate program, and there's a team right now in the women's scene that's a development team that's all Americans, and one of the requirements on the team is that they get they're also in school, which is pretty cool. One of their riders just got picked up by EF, actually, Natalie Quinn, who's only been racing on the road for like a year, and I was looking through her results, and oh my gosh, there's some seriously impressive results in there. So it's definitely a good system.
I think maybe, I'm not sure if the listener is referring to, we have the National Road Series, which is similar to what the US, it's actually the same thing. When I did a year in the US in 2012, I raced like the Redlands Classic and those sort of races, Joe Martin, etc. And we have that in Australia, and that has always been a good stepping stone for riders. And actually many of the top riders that we know of were identified as talents in the NRS series. But, in Australia, I think they've had issues. We briefly touched on it before with the NRS because of just basically trying to get towns to host the races has been impossible, and money has been a big issue for funding. So the calendar was really reduced at one point. I'm not completely aware of what's happening now with the NRS, but that was basically, our stepping stone to getting identified and then getting picked up by a national team. Or now we have continental teams in Australia that are actually sending riders over to Europe, which wasn't the case for women 10 years ago. You basically had to get into the national team like Gracie did or the AIS previously.
Yeah, but Lauren's right. The NRS here is how you race in Australia, and it doesn't really have anything to do with colleges or universities. There's some small, less strong linkages that we have two teams here, Sydney Uni Staminate or Sydney Uni Velo Club. That has a bit to do with a NRS team, as does the ARA racing team that is connected with the Sunshine Coast University, but that's more of like a partnership slash sponsorship slash club, I think, more for the Sydney one. So that's about the extent of it. But we do have like sport friendly unis in Australia. I'd say a lot of unis at least have some kind of sports scholarship. Some of them are better than others, and they do help individuals to be sports people as well as study. But yeah, that's it. In Australia, the NRS is privately funded teams run by our federation. The series is run by our federation, which is also another topic that would take a whole episode. So probably not a good one to get into. Yeah, but it could be better.
When we're in the Aussie season in January, we can dive into it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty tough for an Aussie to get over to Europe still.
Okay, next one. Natalia asks, 1 year from now, so our final episode of the year for Wheel Talk, we'll be talking about what needs to happen / be in place for you to say that progress in women's cycling is definitely here to stay. This is an interesting one. Yeah. I think we would be having a different conversation if it was like a month ago, pre-news that GCN is collapsing. It would be a completely different conversation. But now with that happening, I think a year from now, what will have to be in place is a solid way to watch the women's races. Unfortunately, I did not think that we were going to be going backwards in this way. But I think, one of the biggest things with the progress in women's cycling has been being able to actually watch it. And if a year from now it's proved that, okay, GCN collapsing, well, it sucks, didn't end the development in the sport we worked so hard for, if it's still accessible, then I think we'll be in a good spot. But we have no idea what's going to happen over the next year and what's going to happen with the live coverage.
Yeah, I think when in a year, we'll know viewership. And that will give us an indication how many people went looking for alternative ways to watch the racing, that they were that committed to watching women's cycling, that they bought a new membership to whatever platform. It's Warner Brothers now, I think, US.
In the US, I believe that the races are going to be on HBO Max. I'm not going to call it Max. It's the dumbest name.
Look, and I think this isn't just an issue with road cycling, but mountain biking is the same thing, right, with the UCI. So that's been bought out too. And there was a whole debate about
Red
that.
Bull was doing such an awesome job.
Yeah, I mean, it was easy, wasn't it? You could just jump on the Red Bull YouTube channel, whatever it was, and you could watch mountain biking and road cycling at the same time. I love that. And also, of course, then it was on GCN. So, yeah, it's a hard one. But I think in terms of viewership, we won't know until next year. I think the Tour de France, regardless, races like the Tour de France will not be affected because it already has this, it's already built this following and there's this excitement around it. So people are going to be able to, I hope, just watch it on their national television channels that are just available. I don't know how that works in countries like Australia, but definitely in Europe, I think people will be able to tap into that in a lot of countries. But it is a big question mark. And then what does that mean for future sponsorship? Because there is a lot of excitement about women's sport in general right now. And even if we look at women's football here in Belgium, I can turn on one of the very many sports channels and there'll be women's football games on.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, like Abby said, it's a backward step for cycling, but actually it impacts women's cycling more than men's cycling. So it's going to be interesting to see in a year from now what that impact has really will really look like. So, but now we know, aside from that, I'd like to see, just that excitement around those bigger women's races continuing. So, we've talked about it a few times, more than a few times, but how good the Tour de France Femme was this year, just in terms of engagement and excitement and the level. I think that we're, of course, coming into an Olympic year, so the level is going to be super high. I think most races are going to be awesome to watch. People are, I think most fans are well and truly engaged in women's cycling now. There's some great characters. People want to follow not just the racing, but there's certain riders and certain teams. So just having that strong fan base there, unfortunately, will be impacted a bit by these TV rights. But I think I'd like to see just that, I don't know, at least the attitude around women's cycling continue to build. I'm not quite sure how to track that as a metric, but I think we'll know, because we work in cycling. You do kind of get that vibe one way or another.
Yeah, and I think that the races that are going to be impacted the most are like the races that are a bit smaller, right? So our Paris-Roubaix is our Tour of Flanders, Tour de France Femme, all those big races that are very well established. I think people are going to be able to view those, but the luxury of just going on GCN and picking up a smaller race here in Belgium or Turingen, for example, I think that's going to be the challenging thing now.
I do have one thing, though, that I would like to never see again, is having races like Gravel World Championships like completely fucked up. Like, let's just not have that. I think that would be nice to not have those kind of backward steps. Just have women's cycling taken seriously by the people that need to take it seriously. I think fans is a whole other story. I think we're doing well. Anyone listens to this podcast, we don't need to tell you. But I'd like to see some of the bigger institutions and brands continue to build their respect for our amazing athletes and the racing.
Well, I mean, it makes sense too, money-wise, right? It's such a huge growing market. It continues to grow, the off-road sector. So
yeah, exactly. Don't be dumb.
Yeah, come on. I mean,
final question. Moving on. Moving along, because we still have to do what we're obsessed with.
True.
So, final question. Michelle asked us to pick our dream teams.
Oh, dear Lord.
So that's bikes, riders, DS.
That's a huge question, Abby.
No, it's not. You can just rattle
with
off
no
your team.
preparation.
I put it in there. I was like, here is the prompt. It's right there in the spreadsheet.
We don't read stuff.
That's the beauty of this podcast.
We can save that question for our first episode back.
I think save it because there's some serious thought to go into it. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I have a whole list right here of
I bet you
15 riders.
I was going to go more on an emotional
You already know I'm picking
track.
Iris to be my DS.
Yeah.
My roster is unhinged. Okay, so we'll save that question.
Oh. It can be like past riders as well.
Yeah, sure.
That would make it fun. All right, this is great.
Yeah. You can do whatever you want. Heck,
Great.
You could be like, I want Jessie Diggins on my cycling team.
Lauren's just
going
to pick her 2012 Lululemon team.
Yeah. And add Gracie in there as well.
Oh.
Abby.
It's a good situation when you want to rebuild it. I would be honored to make the cut, but you probably shouldn't add me.
You just have to give us a heads up a week before, so make sure I do my homework properly.
I told you to check the spreadsheet for the list of questions.
Yeah, but I was like, we're not going to get through all of these. And then I thought that was such a long one. It was such a long one that I was like, nah.
Okay, we're going to start out the very first episode of 2023. We're going to answer this question, pick our dream team. There's a couple other really good questions in here that are looking to the future.
Which is great.
Ian asked which rider will likely shake up SD Works next year, and he threw out Chloe Daggart as an example. There's a question about predictions. So I think we hold off on predicting until 2024. You don't want to predict 2024 until you're in the early stages of 2024, right? Like, who knows what's going to happen at midnight on December 31st, 2023. Yeah. Anyway, so we'll wrap up this episode now with what we're obsessed with. Does anyone want to go first?
I'll go
What
first.
are you obsessed with?
I have been reading a really good book. I'm a bit late to it. It's like a bestseller from quite a while back. It's called The Secret Life of Bees. And
yes.
It's breaking my heart. It's so good. And I'm going to be so sad when I finish it. I think I'm going to read the last chapter tonight. It's just so beautifully written. And it's really good. So if you haven't read it yet, I'm sure a lot of people probably have. But
I watched the movie as well.
Yeah, I was wondering, did they make a
movie's not
movie?
nearly as good. They did, but it's not. The book is like way more powerful.
Yeah. I was like,
There's
this is
just
a
a lot
very
more
adaptable
detail.
book, but it's gorgeous. So very much enjoying that. And now when I look at bees in my little garden, it's even nicer.
Well, mine isn't nearly as cool as that. I'm obsessed with Tadej Pogačar singing Taylor Swift on Urska Zigard's Instagram.
I did not see that.
I have not seen that at all.
The Urska posted an amazing video of Pogačar singing Cruel Summer on her Instagram and said that their goal for 2024 was to sing more Taylor Swift together. And I'm all for it because perhaps Pogačar singing Taylor Swift will prove to the dads, chads, and brads that, you can be cool and listen to Taylor Swift.
They just seem like, I mean, it is social media, a really cute couple.
Yeah,
and
they
like
look
really
they have a lot of
young,
fun.
right?
Yeah.
It's like teenage love almost that you're watching
cute,
unfold.
Yeah, it's like,
but he
to be
also
young.
looks like he's 12. And
he does.
Might be 26 or 24.
It's like Jonas Vingegaard
jersey, right?
really looks like he could be in his...
The fact that he has a child is bonkers. Yeah. Anyway, I'm obsessed with that. Not so much Pogačar singing Taylor Swift, which is awesome, but more just the point that this person who people think is so rad, like people are huge fans of him, and he's singing Taylor Swift. And I guarantee that there are fans of Pogačar who are like, oh, Taylor Swift, she's, blah, or whatever word vomit they have.
Well, remember I screenshotted, when was it, like 2 months ago, and sent you what Hannes had been listening to on Spotify?
Loved it.
Just all Taylor Swift. It was really surprising for me. But when I met him, he was really into Beyonce. Like genuinely into Beyonce. And I was like,
legend, this guy.
This guy is special.
Yeah, he really is special.
He's quirky. But yes,
so
he really is. He's a bit of a dork as well, which we align.
He just has good taste in women. Gosh,
he does.
Seriously,
talented women.
Powerful.
He can see talent from a mile off. Loren.
Did you get it, Loren? Did you get the hint?
Yeah.
Loren.
I'm obsessed with actually not doing a hell of a lot. I stopped working a couple of weeks ago because I'm due in January, and this year has been super hectic. So I'm just enjoying, for once, one thing, trying to let go of a bit of control because that's been a big thing for me. And just, feeling like it's okay not to do a lot at the moment because we've got a big month coming up in January with a lot of life things. So it's been good to just do nothing and not feel guilty about it because I have so many amazing women around me in my life doing incredible things, you guys included. And I think sometimes you can be hard on yourself when, it lifts you up, but at the same time, makes you question what you're doing yourself. So, I'm just letting go at the moment. That's good. So it's not really an obsession.
You've earned putting your feet up. You've had such a crazy year, and like I'm just in awe of you as a human being.
Thank
me
you.
too. You've definitely earned
Yeah.
it, but I do want to say that we don't need to earn rest. And that's something I really struggle with as well. Like, I'm exactly the same, Lauren. Like, I think a lot of people listening can relate, especially women. It's just like, just that guilt all the time, regardless of whether you're a parent or not. It's just like allowing yourself that time to do nothing and not feel bad about it. I think that's actually really tough.
Yeah. It's just because we're bombarded with so much all the time. It's not like, I don't sit on social media a lot, but I love LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is like, I've talked about it before, where professionals, you can engage in really interesting conversations and people are showing what they're doing out there. And it's never men. It's just always these just incredible women that I've met along the way through my career in sport and other avenues as well at university. And I'm just like constantly in awe of what people are doing. So yeah, it's inspiring, but then at the same time, you can get a bit frustrated if you feel you're stuck. And I've just been a bit stuck at the moment, but it's situational.
We're coming up on a break, so we're gonna be gone for a couple weeks, but we'll be back in January to talk about the Australian summer. We've got nationals, we've got TDU, very exciting. Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. So
such a good month
to talk about these. It's a great month.
Really, for like all the foreign listeners, if you're planning a time to go to Australia and you want to like combine seeing beautiful things and taking in Australian culture and all of that and some bike racing, you have to go in the month of January.
Adelaide during TDU is insane. Riding around like the Adelaide Hills, there's just like
the vibe.
When I went in 2019, there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people out there. Like people flooded into Adelaide for the race, and it was really, really cool to see. Just the amount of fans that came, like full bike clubs from all over the country come. But I cannot believe that I didn't say that I'm obsessed with Lila skiing because I took Lila skiing.
I was waiting for that.
Oh yeah, her little
I thought that was going to be. My God,
it killed me. Those little videos, loved it.
Oh my God, she had the time of her life. She cried for like 30 seconds when I put the skis on, and then I just held her and did a couple laps. Like on the rope pull, Palma, we call it Palma. I did a couple laps of that just holding her so she got the feel for like, okay, we're going to go down the slope on these sticks. And then I just held her between my legs and she was loving it. Like she just wanted to keep going. We went again the next day. We did like 8 laps of the Palma, which is like not a small amount for a tiny human. And she just wanted to keep going. She just kept pointing up and then she'd point down when we got to the top. And it was amazing. It was like 2 of the best days I've ever had as a parent. But it was displaced from my mind today by Pogacar dancing to Taylor Swift. But that's way better. Lila skiing is way better. I'm going to take her today after school.
I just love that you live in a place where you can share your hobbies and passions with your kid. That's like one of the most beautiful things about having children is sharing those, I don't know, outdoorsy things that we just love. And skiing, mountain biking, you live in the perfect place. And actually, Gracie, you as well in Canberra is a pretty cool place to bring up a kid if you want them to enjoy the outdoors and appreciate nature.
Yeah, that's true.
We should probably end the episode.
Yeah.
We'll be back. Happy holidays, everybody listening, and Happy New Year. We've really can't put into words how much we appreciate everyone who listens to this podcast. It's for us, it's I mean, it is a job, but it's also a passion, and we've grown closer as people making this podcast, and we love that people have enjoyed listening to us talk about things from books to cycling to movies to family. It's been really cool. So thanks everyone for a year, or less than a year, but for the year of 2023 and podcasting. It's been a joy, and we'll be back in January.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Almost put my foot in it there.